Okay,
Yep,
we all set?
let's do it.
All right. I'm going to call to order our special city council meeting for September 29th. Kind reminder to please put your phones on silent or vibrate. And I will hand it over to Abigail and Will to start the discussion on the bond process and potential projects.
Great. Thank you, Council President. We really appreciate everybody getting together today from wherever you might be. We're sitting here, not at the dais. We're doing this on a not normal council Monday because today is a different kind of conversation. Normally, we are working on stuff that's really day to day, right? You are approving contracts, you are accepting plans. And today is a different day where we're thinking about like where might the city want to be in 20 years and what are some of the major things that need to happen. You've done a lot of that work already by approving plans, by setting direction, by making budgets. For example, in the last couple of years, you have approved or adopted sewer plans, water plans, transportation plans. I know some of those need some refresh, but they have been in the works. An affordable housing strategy, safe routes to school, parks master plan study, and then a public safety study was reviewed and was conducted in 2019. And then, of course, you've heard me talk about facilities. So nothing I bring to you today is new, shocking information. These are all of the things that the city has already identified as priorities, as needs. And today's conversation really is about how might we fund some of those things. What if we want to accomplish the goals and the priorities that council has set? Some of those are going to take money, and today we're going to talk about one of those options for money. So I first wanted to start about just your general thoughts about a general obligation bond. The last time the city did one was for a fire station, a very traditional, easy way to like do bonds, right? It's very tangible. A lot of the things that we put on this one don't feel quite as tangible, right? They're not a new school, they're not a new park. They are things the city needs to do. But some of them are not particularly well defined, or they are defined, but they're not particularly sexy, but they are critical to the future and the infrastructure of the city. So Will has presented over the last couple of weeks just a primer on bonds, how they work, what has happened historically in this city for bonds. And then we talked about what public engagement has happened on your plans, but we haven't had a lot of time to talk to you about why this was a priority. It's a critical project in your work plan, why you identified that as a critical project, questions or concerns you might have. We might not answer all of them tonight, but I just wanted a chance to list all of those things or to hear from everybody about that before we start talking about details. So thoughts about that? They say none of us at the table. I don't know if the mayor was on council. None of us at the table were worked on the last bond that the city had. So it's new to all of us. We're all really starting from scratch. So thoughts you have as you've worked through this. I know this is all you thought about over the weekend. What kind of thoughts do you have about bond processes or bonds in general, and then bonds specific to the city? And I'm going to take some notes. A lot of this we'll probably have to think about later or research questions that come up, but I wanted to just kind of capture your thoughts. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And Councilor President, if you would call on people,
Yes.
making sure that we don't forget folks on the street.
Folks online. Yeah. Well, let's start with folks online. Mayor?
I absolutely, how's my audio okay?
Yes.
I absolutely do not have a clear idea of we should bond for thus and such. I think about it not all the time, but sporadically and periodically and continuously. And the biggest question I'm so excited to hear from y'all about and figure out what I think is what's the right amount to bond for? We saw some presentations that show that, like, in order to be sort of within the range of what cities tend to bond for, the amount of money, we have a lot of headroom, but I'm not convinced that means we should use all that headroom. So how much and what for? I am absolutely not at the end of the decision-making process on that. I'm eager for the discussion.
Thank you. Doug?
Yeah, thanks. It's it's a difficult thing in Oregon to get funding for cities to do things, right? I mean, we're lucky to have property taxes that fund capital projects and things that we want to do in the city. That's certainly not enough. Inflation is surpassing usually what the 3% is from 5 and 50. So we can't always count on that. We can't count on, you know, uh, transient lodging taxes to offset that. We have tools like urban renewal to be able to offset that to do projects, but there's definitely a number of projects that have been identified through, lots of work, all the aforementioned, plans that we put together. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to focus on something that the city needs to get done and prioritize it and understand, how that would relate to something being on the ballot and how that would be received, right? So I'm weighing all of that. But, to Mayor Paul's point, it's, other cities and you see what they do with the amount of dollars that they can raise because they have, large tax bases. We don't have that luxury. We're a small city, so have to take that into consideration. But seeing things like, the county passing, safety bonds and things like that that have happened in the recent past, weighing that against what's happened with the Parks Department and, bond measure failing recently. So it's a lot to take in, but I think it's good that we're talking about it. And I remember Councilor Zandmiller a number of years ago saying this is something really should be looking at. So this is kind of years in the making. So I'm glad we got to the table now to start digging in and seeing what options we have.
Anyone in here?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say some of the other things that it's like we have to consider is, what other things are gonna be on the ballot? How much money are we asking our, residents to pay all at the same time? Because there's a bunch of other asks from other, entities, then that can be complicated. Also, the economy, people more willing to, fund something when times are good and they're able to, maybe have a little bit more wiggle room in what they can afford to pay, as opposed to times when it's, there's not that much room. And then I think also it's about, I thought a lot about like, in terms of projects that I was considering, like, is there a relationship between all of these projects that, or some of the projects that we could pick that would help create like a clear narrative about what is this that we're trying to do? Is this like an infrastructure bond where we're funding for multiple kind of these different infrastructure, projects? Because, it can be sometimes challenging if we're trying to throw the kitchen sink at, to get something bonded, and there's a bunch of different projects that maybe there's not quite the same relationship towards. So there's a lot of things affect each other that are not even necessarily like inside this room. So definitely something I was juggling with.
Traditionally, cities have bonded for usually long-lived assets, CapEx, actual capital, long-lived assets, buildings, equipment, pipes, stuff that big infrastructure sorts of projects. It's not usually a project-based, not project, programmatic-based bonding or that sort of stuff. That programmatic stuff is usually stuff that comes out of general fund, stuff that's more discretionary in nature. So something that I would be interested in hearing from the rest of us is the scope of which projects we want to bond for, whether it's CapEx or whether it's programmatic, that kind of scope. And then the other scope is how much the size of the bond that we're talking about, because those two things in tandem determine sort of which projects fit. And then there was a couple of other questions I had not related to this list. Is we have a number of projects that we're working on now that may be able to get finished if they were included on this list. So if those things are able to also be considered or not. Those are my thoughts about it.
When you said there are things not on the list, you mean that works in
That
the
we're
projects that we included?
currently working on right now.
Okay. Got it.
Anybody else?
Kind of thinking about what the mayor mentioned about trying to figure out the amount that we want, like what's that sweet spot of the amount that we want to bond for? It feels kind of chicken and an egg. I mean, in all fairness, I might have a little PTSD from the last bond that I was involved with, or if you know, a party to, and I think that the amount is relevant, and I feel like this seems like a different approach, and I talked to Will a little bit about it, or emailed Will a little bit about it, of, you know, in my, albeit little experience with bond measures, there was a need, and the need was very great and immediate, and you went out and asked for money to fund that need, and this feels like we have needs and things that the city has, you know, councils have in the past said these are priorities and we need to figure out how to make these things happen, but it doesn't feel as urgent on the one hand as some of these other, you know, as some of these other projects like the library or the pool. But I also am grateful to have the opportunity to be proactive as opposed to reactive. I think that this is a really great opportunity for our community to be proactive in this. I also think that there are a lot of overlap and connections. Like I was thinking about, you know, one of the opportunities for affordable housing is to reduce the number of required parking spaces to make it easier for people to develop housing. Well, when you have less parking spaces, people are parking on the street. And so the need for safe routes is more because you have pedestrians and bike lanes, or bikers that are now on the street where there's more parked cars. So, you know, we have to think about the bigger context of the projects that we're going to be doing and what we're funding and how they work together. And then I also think that, you know, the facilities issue is really important, and making sure that we have staffed, supported, housed police department is critical. So I don't know, I put a lot of thought into this for the last month since you gave us the primer, and I don't know, it feels weird.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to kind of piggyback up, like, get the chicken and the egg thing, like. But at the same time, I'm seeing like there's a need for a lot of things to fund in the city, right? So it's not like we have nothing and we're just like, hey, we could do something with money, but it's like we do have needs. So yeah, and I guess just kind of, I don't know, figuring out. I agree with like kind of having an idea of what's a realistic total bond that we could have will definitely help. Pick a project, or like, are we just talking about one project? Are we talking about multiple projects? And yeah, I don't know. It is kind of a lot, but I definitely think that we have a lot of options, so no, there's no lack.
I think another thing that was helpful for me in just talking to Abigail about this is that, you know, in terms of the, you know, projects that we have up here that we've all decided are important, just because something doesn't wind up on the bond, doesn't mean it's not important, and doesn't mean it's not gonna get done. It's discussing about what is appropriate for bonding. And that was kind of helpful for me, because I think I got into a pattern where I was thinking like, oh, like, this doesn't make it, like, that's that, and that's not necessarily the case, just trying to be, you know, efficient.
And I guess I had several more things to say, like. That was another thing of, there was covered a little bit on the thing we got, but like. If we don't bond for this, how else can we get this
Yeah,
project done?
agreed.
Like knowing that would also be helpful.
I want to jump in here. So I echo a lot of what has already been said. What is the tax rate going to be? What is the bond size? How long? What are the risks to potentially not choose some of these projects? Like how critical are they as far as acuity wise? What were some of the lessons learned from the previous bond in the city? Appreciate having your lens as someone who's gone through this process around communication and how we're, you know, communicating with our constituents. How much of this is actually could be potentially funded through federal, state, any other grant, like the gentleman that was presenting about the $2.5 million grant, like how realistic is that, right? Could that offset some of the bond amount? Could we look at other ways to fund some of these projects, such as, water rate increases, sewer increases? Is that another potential way? So just talking about all of our financial options, and I appreciate something that you mentioned around that these projects all are intertwined, and something I've been thinking about is, if this roundabout is completed, how does that unlock housing development, right? And so what are the ripple effects there? And I think Councilor Stupina mentioned it, that we also know that some of our other peers are going for other bonds. And so how does that have a financial impact on our community overall if, both of them were to pass or only one passes? What does that look like? Do we know what some of our other peers are bonding for is in regards to the amount and the duration and whatnot? So those are some of my thoughts. Anybody else have anything else they want to mention?
I'd also say it'd be important to know in terms of these other not municipalities, these other entities, taxing districts, if they are, if we're talking about replacement bonds, if that's what we're going for, if they're calling for, going for something that would be an increase in like taxable value. Again, like I don't want to worry too much about what other people are doing, because we need to, manage our own things, but it is certainly a factor that I think should be considered.
One of the thought I had was, whatever we choose as a council, I was reminded by a wonderful friend, that it's gotta be something that we're all willing to advocate for.
Mhm.
Like there's a note in the primer about PACs and how, this isn't just something that we're doing as a council, but if we are willing to spend evenings and weekends talking to people and, promoting this, whatever it is, we have to be passionate enough about it to, put in the extra time. So, I think about that as like, what am I willing to advocate for? What do I feel good about, really supporting, as a member of this community and as a representative of it.
Yeah, talking about Piper's placement might not sound as fun as appealing as, a building or whatnot. The other piece that I just thought of around funding mechanisms, Councilor Polson and I had an opportunity to attend a League of Oregon Cities where they were talking about different sorts of gas taxes that exist, but very limited duration. It also targets the tourism that's coming into town. So another alternative way could that potentially help? And there have been other cities, they mentioned, I believe it was 3 of them that were taking advantage of that. And it was, like I mentioned, limited in duration, so it wasn't year round.
We have that already, don't we?
We have a guest.
Yeah, and
3 cents.
is there a limit on how much that could be, or is that something that's?
3 cents, and it's the same all year round.
Yeah.
What Councilor Rivera is talking about is a time period that it's higher.
Yeah.
So like 6 months a year, other cities charge a higher rate.
Interesting, okay.
When they know the highest rates of tourism is when they have it.
Like
So it was
December.
like April
When the
through,
ghost
yeah.
Well, I appreciate all of these, and I think that all of these comments are so important and valid. One thing I didn't hear was, do we even want to do this? And I want to put that out here and say, if tonight, at the end of this conversation, you say that we don't want to go for a bond measure in 2026, or we don't, we want to delay and do more research or something like that, that is also a perfectly acceptable answer. But to really tonight, just have that first pass of, one, do you want to direct staff to do work on a bond measure for 2026? Because that's not a small ask. It's an important priority. It's on your list, but I want to recognize the workload attached to that. So I don't want to go into it if you're not super enthusiastic about it. And then two, if yes, then what are the projects that you can be enthusiastic about,
Yeah.
that you think would be a good fit for a bond, that you think voters would get behind? Because, as I said, the stuff cities has feels a little bit more intangible. We want to be proactive and we don't
Yeah.
want to wait till things break.
Right.
I don't have the option to shut down the city for a year until the taxpayers approve, some kind of measure to fund us. So we have to keep moving and we have to be ahead of the game. And part of that means that folks might feel that our stuff isn't broken enough to actually do it. But if we wait till it's broken, then it's a disaster.
Mhm.
So we really have to keep moving forward. One piece I want to put out right now is MCED as our convener for all of the local the economic groups has been kind of keeping a running list of who might be going for what measures in the coming years. Spoiler alert, there's something always.
Mhm.
But November of 2026 looks pretty full. So, and I've been saying for years now, like, city's gonna go in November 2026, but other things have happened. The Parks District was gonna go in 24, they did, like, they kind of claimed that time. But things haven't passed, and so they are revisiting it. So things scheduled for, scheduled, I'm gonna put that in quotes. Things that tentatively are moving forward are the Parks and Rec District looking for a pool. Definitely a bond, maybe a levy as well. That's unknown at this point. I heard an excellent presentation by some folks presenting their survey and some of their initial thoughts right now at Rotary last week, but they're still very much in the working forward. All of these are, but the assumption that they would go in May. The assumption is also that Parks and Rec District, if it did not pass, they might come back and repackage it and try again in November of 2026. So they're looking to kind of claim both of those spots. The school district has a study group right now. I actually am lucky enough to sit on that group to look at their capital projects. They have had I think it's a 10-year bond. It was last passed in 2026, so they're looking to renew or move forward with the bond in November of 2026. So that's a really big one, a school district facilities bond. Back in 2026, that's how they, found the funds to.
2016.
Yes, so back in 2016 that's when they built May Street School, right? That was the bond that built May Street and did a lot of work on all of the schools. So they're going through that process right now. It is my assumption they will move toward that to something in November 2026.
But you said that's like a renewal?
That would be a question I don't know. At this time, they don't know, but it could be that they would want to renew at the same rate. In the last 10 years, inflation and construction costs have gone up so much that I don't know if that would buy them enough to address their needs. They might want to increase, and they won't decide that till summer. Like
But
possibly in
they
June.
would like at least be like, oh, look, you're already paying this much, if
Yeah.
it pays more.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, they would continue. It might be a continuation plus a. The county does not know, like, they are going through a facilities process right now. As we all know, the courthouse is like one of the worst courthouses in the state. They have an administration building that is really out of date and doesn't serve their needs. Public health is in a kind of neighborhood way far away. They're looking to look at what it would look like if all of their facilities were together. That would be a major bond request. They're working through the studies right now of what that would look like for funding. It says there will be considering financing structures in fall 2025, which could set them up for a bond in November of 2026. Could also be that they wait till November of 28. So the county has something that they are working toward, but they, at this point, could not, honestly, just like us, could not give us a clear answer as to whether they think they're going to go forward in 2026 or not. Other things to know, I don't know that you care about. We do, of course, care about our neighboring city, Cascade Locks, but they're looking at a food and beverage tax in May of 26. If that doesn't pass, they'll probably do that again in November of 2026. The community college just passed in bond in November 24. They're good for probably 10 years. And then other things just to know are in May of 2028, the school district would go forward with a operating levy, right? They do that you do it for 5 years, but you try to renew it every 4 because you want to go on the even numbered years, and if it doesn't pass, they give you a second chance, so. And then, of course, the county has the public safety levy, assuming that they would want to renew that again. I think that also shows up again in November of 28. So to summarize, May 26th, Cascade Locks, Parks and Rec. November 26th, school district, Parks and Rec again, and Cascade Locks again, if they don't pass the first time. Maybe the county, unlikely, but could be the county. May of 28, school district operating levy, again, could be the county. November of 28, the county's public safety levy. So now we're to 2030, and you're like, well, if the parks passed a levy, they would probably need to go for a levy renewal in
Right.
2030. So all to say, if you are waiting for the perfect moment,
No.
it doesn't exist. However, November 2026 is pretty stacked.
Yeah,
So I don't know that's, I wanted you to have that information. I don't know if that would persuade you one way or another, but this would definitely be a factor.
I think it's really important that as we think about what projects, and we finalize it, that it's to the point where we can communicate to folks, it's not broken quite yet, but if we have a sewer pipe go out, here's what that means, that we're not necessarily causing fear, but that we're giving realistic factual information of, if we don't do this now, here's what the impacts could look like. Abigail, for the Parks and Rec and for the school board, do they have an amount?
No.
Not yet.
At the parks, if you did their survey, they were looking at three options. The one which was just to replace
Yeah.
the pool, the pieces they need to replace was 33 million, and they went up from there.
Yeah.
But Abigail
Yeah,
or Gladys, is there something funny with the double majority where it's unlikely that enough people turn out for a May election to actually accomplish a revenue raising action?
yeah, great point. You wonder why everybody is stacked up on the May and November of the even numbered years, and that's the reason. The special elections, like long ago, you would see elections in March. Like technically there is a March election, a May election, a September and a November. But the double majority rules, which are half of the voters have to show up and of the, participate, and of those, more than half have to, vote yes. So that's why it's twice, right? But once you have to get the majority to show up, and then second, you need to get the majority vote. The only time the double majority does not apply are the May and November of even numbered years. So that's why no one is going out on odd number years. That's why no one's going from March or September. So in that respect, it has done what the voters wanted to do, right? It has truly made agencies compete against each other so that they have nobody gets to slip in on a September ballot and nobody noticed it.
Yeah.
But it has definitely made it more difficult for planning
Yeah.
from the agency point of view.
It sounds like the school district has a bond that goes every 10 years though, and
That's my impression.
would we want to do something like that, or at least have a conversation of X amount of time that we're going to sustain some of these projects? There's always a need for more housing, and what would those projects potentially be, or what would our timeline be moving forward?
I'm glad that you brought that up, and not that I think that is part of today's conversation, but I do anticipate that one legacy we can have is if we set up a bond that feels responsible and somewhat sustainable, that 10 years or 15 years, and we'll talk through amounts and times, not in great detail tonight, but a little bit to give you an idea, that we would set it up that 10 years or 15 years from now, we could go back to the voters and say, we've been responsible, here's what we've accomplished, here's what we would like to do next, because our transportation projects, our infrastructure projects, not knowing where housing will be in 10 years, like those things will continue.
I think that's also really important for the voters is, hey, you said yes to these dollars. We were good stewards of these dollars. Here's the impact and the outcome that it's had. Here's how we've been tracking the success of what that looks like, so that, if we are to ask again, they feel like, all right, this is a good return on investment.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Other thoughts? Okay, hearing all of that, how's the temperature? You want to continue, or are we done? Like no to the November 2026, let's all go home.
No, let's keep talking.
Okay, because our next piece is a little bit more, you all have dots, it's a little bit more participatory. Oh, sorry, no, I'm jumping ahead. The next part is show and tell about the different projects that we have. So these are the projects that staff identified as being eligible for a bond, critical for those cities' future, and pieces that would benefit from bond funding. Not to say that a bond would be all of the funding. So my hope is that we're going to present a little bit of information about each one of those. I'm going to not let you ask questions unless you need to have that question answered in order to decide whether you think it goes on bond. So tonight is not about the worthiness of the project, not the bigger picture. It truly is very narrowly focused on like, I need to know this in order to have a, whether I vote for a bond or not. So with that, you want to share information? You want me to share information? Should we just go through if you have questions about any of them? So you all have the information that was provided.
I'll go through,
Okay.
I think we'll take them just in the order that they were presented.
They are not in a particular order. Yes, I should have put them in alphabetical, but
Yeah.
so.
And just orienting you to the structure here, while Neil, go ahead, you're first up, but
All right.
Well, you're actually presenting.
Yeah.
Oh.
while you're walking there, so the dollar amounts is a range, low and high. Often there's other revenue sources, and so we plug those in sort of the optimistic scenario, and then everything nets to then what would be put on the bond. That's what's in the red. And then so short summary fact sheet, but we also do have how we could get the project done outside of bonding in the alternatives to bonding. So I'll take it. We'll just try to keep this to about 3 minutes, no more than 5 minutes each.
I think mine's gonna be really quick because since last week, you guys got a full presentation through council, so really for what we presented last week, this idea of a police department. As I said last week, it's gone on for several decades. I don't want to pull any old band-aids off the old park days, but Morrison Park, actually, when I first started, they were gonna actually build a police department there. It was back in the early 80s when they were doing the model drop and go kind of building projects back in the, I don't know if you would call those, but since then, that's when it started, the idea of conception actually as a real purpose-built police department. Since that, we kind of got bounced around. I mean, kind of give you a little bit of background history where we come from real quick, since you kind of know the project. We actually were in Allen's woodworking cabinetry on Cascade, if you guys are familiar with that. That was the police department for quite some time. Again, it was just kind of bounced around, and then we took over this building. This is what actually we took over the complete building, top and bottom. Initially, it wasn't the bottom, it was the art gallery, but we had the whole top floor. And then eventually we took over the top and bottom. And then in 2008, when we had the issues with finances, the city looked at how the best way can we work to get back on our feet. And that was one of the things, was to sell the 301 Oak Street building and then consolidate this building into police and city hall upstairs. So that era, it was 2010, they actually did a full remodel. At that time, Bob Francis was the city manager, said, hey, we're gonna stick you in the basement, we're gonna give you 5 years, we'll get you a place to stay. After that, we'll get you something. That's been 10 plus 15 years ago since then. That's kind of where we're at today. That's what last week we kind of brought a proposal. We've done a study in 2018. That was one of the city goals for council, was to look at what can we do to get a building, police department. Which there was lots of stuff with McKinsey, just never really got any traction further on that project. Looked for partnering with the county, which they didn't have any money at the time as well. Still, I'm gonna say openly, they can still have any money today. That's why they're probably looking for future bonding. And then this last goal setting, we still had a kind of an interest in what can we do for future police department, and that's why we're here today. As far as this is probably our only viable option this time, is do a remodel on the existing floor space we have today. So if you guys ever want to tour it, put your mask on and go with it. Ventilation mask, that.
Yeah. That's right. Few minutes, and when we get to, so you have dots, you're gonna do some dot voting. When we do that, if you have specific questions, you can also ask the presenters, follow up at that time.
All right. We're gonna stick with buildings. This is Public Works building. Currently, I think most of you have been to the Public Works facility. We currently operate out of a steel building. It's more like a garage than anything. It's been converted over and over multiple times since I've been there. The
Adam, I'm sorry to interrupt, I can't say, is the building 2 trailers and 4 outbuildings?
Yeah, it's so we operate out of one building, we have 2 additional mobile trailers that are there, and then we have 2 additional buildings that we work out of as well. During COVID, we were required to separate, and we added staff at the time, and since COVID, we are still separated in the operations crew kind of separates into 2 different locations to eat lunch and take breaks. We just ran out of room in our old break room that we had there. So we reached out to an architect to come up with a design. We would keep the existing steel building that we have, use it for storage for our machines and equipment. We would tear down one building and build a roughly like 3,800 square foot office building that would have roughly 10 office spaces, conference room for 20 folks, and a restroom. And one big thing with the current building that we have is efficiency. I don't know, we've insulated it multiple times since we've been there. Our gas bill's extremely high, where we're at in the winter time there. The buildings that the maintenance guys are operating out of, there's no air conditioning in any of them, so those guys, they tough it out in the summertime. So as far as funding for the project, we currently, there is no projected funding sources, and there is an option for utility rate support. We have identified as well, which would increase water, sewer, and storm rates to achieve that.
I'll append on to that too, as we look at all the other projects, they're gonna rely heavily on Public Works to do them efficiently and quickly and meet the expectations of the voters. And so we'll be relying on them, but they have no space for anyone, for any additional personnel or capacity at this time.
Yeah.
So I think that's a consideration with this as well.
We just took over their meeting room to make 2 new spaces for staff. And
You're still, you're on road servicing.
oh, do you need one set?
Alright. Next one up is roadway resurfacing. City staff has identified locations around the city in need of pavement management. Currently, the city spends approximately $125,000 on a single project. Completing 3 to 5 blocks of pavement management each year. Basically, arterial roads have been identified and targeted with small annual funds. And then with a single larger project, it would allow Public Works to do maintenance on roads in bad shape within residential areas as well. We had budgeted 150, we're down to 125, and I believe we're gonna even lower that again coming up just due to some budget cuts within the road department. So by doing a large project, we get better pricing on asphalt and labor. And this would allow us to do a much larger area for significantly less money if we were to do those just over a period of time with smaller funds. So same with this one, we've not sourced any outside funding. And this is a $1.2 to $1.8 million project. Part of this would be probably having a consultant come in and identify roads that we could potentially pave throughout the town. We wouldn't just, I mean, currently we're doing the main arterials. We would look at both arterials and residential streets that aren't getting preventative maintenance they need.
I'm gonna take Mount Adams roundabout. Roundabout at Mount Adams in US 30 is the key bottleneck to the development of the west side. Roundabout would add the equivalent vehicle capacity for 1,500 additional homes, which is the full build out of the west side. Would also continue to work if wildfire or earthquake cut off power where a lighted street light would not. The roundabout will get done. It's the first priority for the West Side District because all else flows, all of their development and tax increment growth flows from it. So whether or not a bond can be used to supplement and assist is really about when and how quickly it gets done. So in the cost estimate there, we have what the West Side could likely contribute in the semi-near term, next year or two. But that's not nearly enough to get the whole project done, so that's where the bond can come in and assist. Or if the bond paid for the entire roundabout, West Side funds and capacity can be redirected to housing, parks, trails, other eligible West Side District priorities. We do have one that maybe $100,000 of road SDCs could be put towards this. It is a capacity enhancing project, but the road SDC fund is just so not much to draw on. Yeah. Have you got sidewalk info?
All right, sidewalk infill. Yours is not in color, is it?
It is.
It is. Oh, it is in color,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So the map shows, the missing sidewalks throughout the city. Our transportation system plan identified sidewalk, needs, on Sherman, Rand, Serpentine, Belmont, 18th and 22nd Street. There are roughly 10 miles of gaps in the city sidewalk system. This project would aim to fill areas around the city with high pedestrian use to create a cohesive pedestrian system. The funding for this project would roughly cover 5 miles, which up to a local contractor got cost. These are kind of hard costs to come up with, but the same as the pavement management, the cost with doing large portions at a time is a significant decrease by doing big chunks versus doing little small pieces of sidewalk throughout town.
The St. Francis School overlaps a little bit with the sidewalk infill, also overlaps with both of our points and the West Side District urban renewal plans. There are 35 different projects in the very St. Francis School plans that overlap with what's in our transportation system plan. Many are just small striping, signage, pedestrian operated, rapid flashing beacons, things of that nature. I think it's about 90% of the costs are associated with major infrastructure improvements, mostly the Heights Streetscape Plan, but then also notified connections along with new roadways over on the west side. So I have in here what the Heights URA and West Side URA could probably contribute towards. And yeah, this one's very wide as far as you could just put a little bit towards this, or you could, if we did everything, I'd be up to like $20-30 million on this.
Yeah.
So if we chose to add this one, we'd certainly have some additional discussion about exactly which St. Francis School projects are in it. So I'll have to say the cost estimates here are very important. Affordable housing. So Portland, Metro, and Salem have all passed bonds to support affordable housing. The Oregon Constitution was changed, I believe, in 2018 to allow bond proceeds to be used with affordable housing developers in the same way that we did Mariposa Village. We have when looking at affordable housing, you want to decide, do we name and sort of do pre-development on an idea, knowing that might build in a ready-made opposition? Would you say more ambiguous and then figure it out as you go along? That is what Metro and what Portland did, but they said, pass the funds and then we'll acquire property, we'll build. They didn't have like permits in place and design and land acquisition ahead of time, so that's actually not the most common way to do it. The most common way is to say, give us some bonding authority and we'll do good work with it. And I think Mariposa Village shows our ability to execute.
Yeah.
So if you look at what Metro and Portland have been able to produce with their bond proceeds, they've averaged about $120,000 to $140,000 of public money per unit. Whereas our contributions and the county's contribution here from Mariposa comes out to $13,000 per unit. So the range here for 4.8 million to 8.5 million, that just mirrors the levy rates in Portland and Metro and what those would produce here on our tax base. But again, it's highly variable how much to ask for. We could make use of any amount of money. And I would also add that while we typically call affordable housing 60% of AMI or less, the constitutional amendment actually states that the local government that passes the bond decides what the definition of affordable housing is for that bond. So we could even say 120% is our affordable housing, be any amount that we want. So we find them. Yep. Adam, you got the rest.
I can move this on.
Alright. Elevated sewer replacement. A pretty good analysis and preliminary design has been completed for this project. The city has been awarded $575,000 under VA mandatory grant program. Current activities include finalizing design, obtaining permits, property easement, ODOT review, environmental review activities, and drafting solicitation documents. Once these activities are complete, the city would like to move directly into project construction. This project will be managed by the city, and our total budget is currently around $10 million for this project. The existing failing sewer is inaccessible to repair. It transports 1/4 of the city's sewage to the wastewater treatment plant. This proposed project will replace the failing line with 2 lift stations. One would be beginning and the one would be located at First and Cascade, going across the 2nd Street overpass. Second one would be located near Industrial Avenue. You can see there is some under project sources. We have received some grants for this. There is still a significant funding gap. And then there is potential for increasing sewer rates to cover the gap project. All right, last one. Electronic replacement. The city has an obligation with Oregon Health Authority and the EPA to remove the lead main lines throughout town. This has been there is an extended agreement that ends in 2036, so we have to have every lead joint main removed in town by 2036. Preliminary and final design have been completed or are in process for multiple lead joint water line replacement projects currently. We have removed 15,500 linear feet of lead joint lines to date, and we have 36,600 to go. And we've also removed 185 lead goosenecks. This has project funding coming from the water fund, and also alternatives are increasing water rates. You can see by 14% for over a 20-year period to fund.
Great. So those are the projects identified by staff as potential that could be potentially funded through bonds. But, and you can see where your dot voting is going. There's also spots, if you have projects that you also think that you are passionate about, that you think would be a good fit for bonds that you also want to be considered for a 2026 measure. Sorry, Councilor President,
Sorry.
you want to call on people?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was thinking, I was like.
Anyway, just jump right in.
Come in.
I feel like before I can put dots places, it would really help me to know, like, for this funding gap, the levy or the bond would be for this much money or whatever. Is that possible? Or just to like, kind of, I mean, I know we can compare total costs, but
Mhm.
Yeah, it's possible. I think it would be to go through each one individually will take a lot of time. When we do narrow it down, I do have a sheet that's going to show us the minimum and maximum and the expected levy rate over 10, 20, 30 years.
so right now we're just kind of picking the projects
Yeah.
without really knowing what
Right,
impact that has to the voters.
right, right. And I
Which makes.
kind of wanted to, I mean, of course, we have to talk about money at some point, but I kind of wanted to start with like, what are the things that you can be excited about that you think voters would be excited about? And then all of these things are going to need dollars, you know, from a bond, but also from other sources. So it's a little bit, when we get to the part where we talk about projects, Will has a worksheet where we can start talking through what the dollars might look like. But if there are projects here that you don't want to have you don't want to consider for a bond, I don't want to spend time talking about what the bond rate might be for those. So I want to eliminate projects that I don't think have any, you know, that you're not excited about having on a bond.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just because like some of them could be combined into like
Mhm.
an infrastructure kind of thing or something, so like. I don't know, even just having a general like. 40 cents per whatever would make us this much money over
There's
this
a
amount of
table
time.
that has that.
Oh, where is that?
This is in our, I think
Last
this is,
one.
Oh, okay.
this might have been our.
So I guess I should check in and say, do
But,
do
yeah.
others feel that we need to talk money first before you can look at projects you want to actually look at?
Well,
Go for it, yes.
I think now it's kind of helpful to know like what we just even want to do and then have the money, like. You can talk about money afterwards, but I think, going back to what we were talking about before, where it's like. What would we be passionate about? What do we actually really care about? And we can go with at least what the vision is for what we want to bond. And then we can get into maybe more of the reality potentially of like, all right, now let's like figure out some of the financials because, yeah. That workflow makes sense to me.
That's the way we, oh, sorry.
No, go for it, Councilor.
Oh, I just work entirely in the other direction that I can't get excited about something unless I actually know how much the thing costs, or I can actually do the math, at least back of the envelope style in my head. Because without knowing or having some context around it. Sure, just to me, in my mind, it's grasping at straws, so to speak.
I understand that. We've got, what I would say is that we do have some financials
Yeah.
on here, at least of that, but we don't have is how are my fellow counselors. Like, feeling about things like, what are we going to select? So that's where I'm coming from. Like, that's knowledge that I don't have right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think, so we could also do 2 rounds. I mean, we can make this is for sure an iterative process. So if we did a like first kind of temperature check of where are you on projects? And if there are projects that get no dots, I'm not even gonna talk about those anymore in this situation. And then we can talk about money, and if that changes where you think you put your dots. We have, I think about 400 dots. So if we should do a second round of dot voting, we could easily do that. So that would be a piece that we could do a second check-in if that was appropriate.
Gladys,
Yes, go for it.
I don't have the benefit of seeing what the dots, like, how many dots will I vote for all 10?
Oh, we'll get to
or-
that.
4 dots.
And when we get to the dots, Mayor, if you could text me, Councilor Stupina, do you have Will's number?
I do.
Can you text your dots to Will and he will be responsible for putting them on the board?
Are all my dots the same color?
Your dots are,
They will.
you have been assigned dots, like, I will handle your colors.
But I mean, I don't get to put hubba love on one project, and I
No.
kind of like it. Like I get 4 thumbs up. That's it, right?
That's right. And again, today, we are not at the dais, you are not making votes. This is a temperature check of where are we? What do you want staff to maybe do some more research and a good sense of where we are? I think it's 1 dot per project.
Yeah.
And I would say you got 4 votes, 4 dots. If you don't have 4 things,
John.
don't put 4 things on. It's okay to have 1, it's okay to have 4. But we're limiting you to 4 because hard choices have to get made.
Yeah. What I think I heard in all of this is we have some funds regardless of a bond for some of these
Mhm.
projects. I would be curious to know out of the projects that have been presented, and I mentioned it earlier, like which one has the highest acuity? For example, because I have it in front of me, is the lead joint, is this the highest priority or is it ensuring that we have a decent public?
This is like asking me to pick my favorite child.
I know.
And they're all
in the
critical.
hot seat.
I mean, I think it's like, the criteria, I think I said to you in January, you heard last week, our police deserve and desperately need a different facility. I think that's important and I hope that you and the voters might think that's important too. But I would say an elevated sewer, like that breaking is catastrophic. So, which is like, it depends on what kind of measure you have for acuity, like each one. And that's why I say, when you do this, this is not a reflection on the importance of the project.
Right.
Or on, the nature of the city or how we work. It is about what you as elected officials are willing to put, your elbow grease into and what you think would be a good fit for voters. There's a political piece to this and I appreciate that you are not like professional politicians, but this is a political conversation and you are the political people at the table, so.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's
I see.
about which of these projects are gonna impact the majority of our community.
Yeah.
Like, what's the greatest impact? It's the biggest bang for our dollar, I don't know.
Right,
Well,
Yeah,
And I
and-
was the discussion's not gonna end here. It's like. we're
That's
gonna
right.
Put some dots and then we're gonna keep going.
yeah, today's
know,
direction I want
Public
from
will
you.
have Impact, input as well,
Yeah.
like there'll be a lot more to this.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
This is, for me, your city manager, 2 questions. 1, do you want us to work on a bond measure for 2026, work toward that? And 2, if so, what projects do you want us to keep researching for you? So it's really for me looking for direction on how much time and effort do I spend on what things?
I kind of agree with Grant a little bit of like, I feel like this is coming at it. It's like the puppy
It is
dog
a kind of
sale
backwards way, right?
of like, oh, which one do you like? Which one's the shiniest and the prettiest?
Yeah.
Which one do you wanna go? And don't worry about the cost. We'll figure that part out later. But I asked this question of Will too, of like, if there's. What did you say in your email about like the squeezes or the juice or whatever? Like, if there's one project that we all think is really great and the cost of it is not that much. Then does it even make sense to go for a bond for it? Like if there are other funds that are out there
Mhm,
for
yeah.
it, and then if that's the case, do you package that with other things too, so that we're, it's all under the livability, umbrella or whatever, which is
Right.
affordable housing, safe routes to school and, pipes that work,
Mhm.
don't have lead poisoning, that
Right.
lead issues.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So, I don't
And
know.
I think once we do dots and we see kind of the
Yeah.
trends, I think those are the kind of conversations to have of like, a little bit of explaining why you put your dots where you did and looking for, where there's similarities and where there's differences. So.
I just wanted to make a reference to that LOC that we attended where the gal had said, water infrastructure is so important. Do you want your community to be the next Flint, Michigan? And that has really stuck with me. So as we look at these projects, I was just thinking in my head, well, how long do we have until we have to replace it? Like, what does that timeline look
Mhm.
like? Could this be something that is maybe
Yeah.
pushed down on the priority list, whatever the project may be?
Our leaded joints, I want this on the public record, our
Yes.
leaded joints are not going to create a Flint, Michigan
Yeah, no,
situation.
no.
They are
no,
joints,
no.
not pipes. That said, we have to constantly be maintaining our water system.
Right.
I had a question for Grant. Did you mentioned earlier, like if there were things that we're currently working on, like that would maybe go in the blank spots or?
Great question.
Yeah, one project that's currently we're working on is the May Street elevated sidewalk,
Mm-hmm.
which falls under sidewalks.
I think, and I mean, you can certainly put it on, I will tell you from staff point of view, the timing of that, like, if we pass something in November 2026 and received funding in, early 27, start working on 2027. I really hope I'm not talking about elevated sidewalk in that same time.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
So with
Thank
that
you.
example, we would have funds regardless of it being on a bond.
You're paying for that some
Yeah.
way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know the legality of using bond money to reimburse a project that you've already completed. I think that's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Were there other
think about
projects,
potential worst case scenarios.
Yep.
So, just in case.
were there other projects that you had in mind?
Not for now, no.
Did others?
Anybody else online?
You'll notice there's not a big Heights Streetscape project on this. I think we continue to hope that we can find some money, probably not a lot of money, but some money from ODOT, cobble things together. That project is so complex and so big, it would be hard to like portion off, just the 13th and May roundabout or just the Belmont traffic light to do a piece of it in a bond.
Although the cycle tracks are rolled into the Safe Routes to School
Right.
Piece.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about like the safe process school is so complex, like
Mhm.
there's so many options. But the whole thing with the jurisdictional transfer and all that, like, I don't know, it's just like hard for me to wrap my head around like what actually can we do inside process school if we don't have jurisdiction over that. Those streets specifically, I mean, I know there's other stuff too, but I don't know if that one just.
We could have a whole other special meeting. Prioritize the Safe Routes to School.
Gladys,
Paul,
I observed that for the West Side District, we prioritize transportation, housing, and parks, and that we have transportation and housing on this bond list. We're not asking ourselves if we would consider bonding for parks. So that just seemed like worth asking myself the question, like, have I decided that I don't want to bond for parks? I don't know the answer, but I just noticed that we don't have that on there as a choice.
Great observation,
do
Mayor.
would you want parks to be on the list of items that we're working on?
That we're dot voting.
Yeah, that we're not voting on?
You don't have to vote for it.
I mean, Grant mentioned elevated, the sidewalk on May Street, and it sounds like there's dollars there, right? So is that a project that you'd like to add to the list?
I think I would.
Okay.
Is that one of his dots?
Is it the,
No.
is it the like acquisition and development of a new park?
Like land banking, I guess, would be the first idea I would have, like
Okay.
having money to buy land to have more parks eventually.
Can I? Sorry.
Council.
Thank you. Okay, this is the groaner for all of you guys. That I just already know, like, I don't want to say it, but I feel like it has to be said is, in a perfect world, and again, this is my PTSD of having gone through a bond measure. I know that it's a priority that we take care of city projects because we're the city, but at the same time, we know that the county is working on a facilities bond. We know that Parks and Rec is doing parks work with their bond, or just, the pool is the priority, but they're gonna, they were also trying to appeal to the greatest base by including park stuff. And I just feel like it's, I guess it's throwing out the question for all of you to say, is it short-sighted for us to say, we're gonna just do these things and focus on these things? Is there a missed opportunity? And it takes time, and it's like, I've felt this, I've done this dance, it's 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. When you're like, oh, should we think about we're collaborating with, the county on a public safety place, or, we've already been down that road before, but the interesting thing is when you have new people in these chairs or at the county, that there's different thoughts on that. Same thing with the parks thing of like, maybe there's an opportunity to collaborate with them. If we were to prioritize parks, like you guys probably all remember this, or maybe you don't, but like there was a lot of talk about consolidation. It is ridiculous that the city, the county, the port, the school district, the parks district, and the library each own their own parks.
Yeah.
It's so silly,
Yeah.
and, you know, does it make sense for us to, as a city, to land bank? But the reality is, maybe we don't wanna be in the parks business, it's silly that we already are, so, again, I know this is the groaner comment,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, maybe it's something we need to just think about.
I would agree. I would agree.
Outside.
Well, I mean, I think it's a consideration while we're thinking about these things is, this isn't, you know, what I'm hearing Abigail and Will say is these are not our only options.
Mhm.
And if we're doing this, does it make sense to, you know, take a month or 2 months and have conversations with the other entities and say, hey, we're going out in November of 2026, if that's what the council is deciding. And then, you know, if we're going to do this, are we duplicating efforts? Are we asking our combined constituents to pay for things twice, you know, or 3 times? When we could all be working together to say, we're gonna go out for a bond and the total bonds that all of these groups are gonna go for is gonna be this amount. And this gets allocated to this and we're working together, like, I mean, I feel like as somebody that lives in this community, I would feel better about supporting something that I know that the city, the county, and whomever is working towards.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would pay more instead of paying, you know, it's the nickel and dime thing. I don't wanna get paid 10 cents here and another 20 cents there and another $1.50 there, or whatever it is. Can we talk to people real fast and then I mean, not to slow down this discussion, but does it make sense
Yeah,
to do that?
yeah. I think it would be really important to understand the overall timeline, like when do we have to decide? These are the projects by this date so that, you know, a communications team can
Mhm.
come in and do that. I think the other comment that I really appreciated is how are we collaborating with our other peers to have these conversations moving forward, right? So that we're not playing this dance of competing, you know, who's doing this broad grant as opposed to, sorry, bond, not grant. Yeah, as opposed to what's taking place now. Did you want to mention something?
No, I don't believe so.
Anybody else?
Great. Anything else to add to the list? I'm gonna make you do this dot voting. Despite all your concerns and objections. Okay, so you, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 dots. Only one to a project. You don't have to use all 4 if you don't have 4 you're excited about. And the mayor is going to text me, Councilor Stupina is going to text Will, we're gonna put their dots on for them. And go ahead, they're listed here, and this is also your break time, so if you need to refresh. So come back. Say 7:15. Neil, Will, and Adam are available if you have specific questions, and I'll move this out of the way. This is the bid rate for these things. All right, we're done.
Everything's gonna be more important.
Anywhere you're in, it's fine.
All
right, put it right in the middle.
Hello, Randy and Haley. Didn't see you over there till the camera came in that view. So didn't just saying hi.
All right, oh, we're waiting for Paul. All right,
10:20 there.
looks like we are all back.
Give me another polar tangerine sparkling water.
All right, you asked for dollars. Here we go.
Here we go.
So first, before we start, if I can just summarize, for those playing along at home or when I watch this video later. If I just run through, road resurfacing had 0 votes, public works building 4 dots. Police city hall renovation has 6 dots. I think that is the top dot getter. Leaded joint replacement 1 dot, elevated sewer 3, affordable housing 4. Mount Adams roundabout 3, sidewalk infill 2, safe routes to school 4, parks 0, and then we had no other things added. So Will, what are we gonna do with all of these dots?
Yeah.
With this information?
So anything that didn't get 4 dots, I've put up there as a no. That's not a final answer. Nothing we do today is gonna be final. So things can be brought back at any time. But we did want to get a fiscal gut check on what were the top ratings. And so for the things that got 4 or more dots, if we did all the police department, public works, safe routes to school, and affordable housing, based on the cost estimates in your packet, would be between 15.4 and $33.1 million. And then whether or not we bond on a 10-year, 20-year, or 30-year basis, these are the levy rates per thousand. And then they're shown graphically here at top and bottom amount. Here's the levy amount over here on the right side. So you need a lower levy if you borrow over a longer period because you have more time to pay it back. But you will end up paying more overall in interest. And it will be longer before you can go out and re-up for your next set of projects. So you're kind of tying the hands of future councils in a bit the longer you go out to. What these reference lines are here is I looked at, I think over the past 12 years, what is the highest rate? What is the difference between the highest rate that voters in this, property owners in the city have paid versus what they're paying today? And then the green line is what's the difference between the median amount of property taxes that they've paid over the last 12 years versus what they're paying today. So gives you a kind of gut check at least at what folks have paid in the past, when these would follow along those lines. So what we wanted to do is work from the least ranked to the highest ranked and see if now that you see how much it will cost. There's kind of consensus for at least thumbs for removing the projects. And also this is time for folks to ask questions and also explain their votes and discuss.
Can I ask a clarifying question? This is if we were bonding for all 4 projects or? All 4. All 4. Okay.
Yeah, all the ones. So the way this works is I can turn things on or off. And it will change the levy rate and then that will come up.
So first, is that how you expected things to show up? Are you surprised by those results?
You mean in terms of what was chosen?
Yeah.
Or I'm a little bit surprised on a couple things. Or one thing, actually, really
Yeah.
specifically. I'm most surprised about the Mount Adams roundabout. I can go into why I'm surprised about that.
Tell us more.
Looking at these things ahead of time, I thought that was gonna be the thing that would get the most dots. Specifically because, one, I feel like in terms of something that serves the public, both in terms of city residents and non-city residents, a thing that is infrastructure oriented, and a thing that looks like one single project that kind of hits all of them. In addition to that, we have said, or staff has told us many a time over just the past year that I've been on council, that we don't really get pretty much any development in there, any of the housing that we want, that we've said is the most, you know, one of our chief goals. If we do not have that roundabout, because it is an intersection that will not support that. And in addition to that, having that roundabout there then opens up some of these other things that we want to do, because you get development in the urban renewal area, the West Side Urban Renewal District. You grow that tax increment, then you have funds to do some of these other things like the safe routes to school projects that are in that area, some of the sidewalk info that's in that area. And so I kind of saw that as a really important key for, you know, a number of different things. And again, I know I'm just talking about importance, not necessarily importance of it being on a bond, but that kind of struck me as like one of the, probably the most significant thing on here. So I am really surprised to see that.
Any other thoughts? To me, it's as important as to the no's as the yeses, to say, okay, those are things we're gonna continue to work on and try to find in different ways, but we're not, you know, we're not going to look at them for a bond. So that's great to get that kind of clear direction.
Oh, and I forgot to mention also, we all know that that intersection is not good. Anybody who's tried to use it, it's frustrating, you know, it's not an ideal intersection, just based on the actual intersection itself, not with all these other things attached to it, so.
Yes, like, I definitely agree with what you're saying. I did not put my sticker by that one because I think the main reason is because we have funding coming from somewhere else that will help with that. Like, yes, I understand the urgency and like it would help it happen faster. I also think like a lot of people know that intersection has failed, but there's a lot of people who don't really use that intersection or drive by there, and it might be a really hard thing for them to realize like, oh, that isn't good. Like, I don't use that intersection very often. When I do, I just drive through it. Like, so everybody's like, I think experience of that is a little bit different, and the messaging around like, it's just a complex message of like, if we do this one thing, we can do all these other things too. I mean, it's a good message, but I don't know, it's like, I'm kind of like, I think it's really important. If I had 5 dots, I probably would have put it on that one, but yeah, I don't know.
Hard choices.
Makes sense, but.
Yeah. Doug or Paul?
Yeah, for just speaking about that, I agree with the second part of what Amanda said. You know, it's just the messaging is difficult. I agree with what Ben said, that it is a critical project for development, to spur development. That development then funds urban renewal, which can fund things like safe routes to school, right? So it's all related. But I think, to Amanda's point, it's a complicated thing for, you know, a bond measure message. This is my thought.
Paul, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I was swayed in my voting by the last 2 items, sewer and the joint replacement. It said basically, we can pay for these by raising the rates. So part of me is like, oh, that's like a whole nother funding source opportunity, and it's another discussion, but leaded joints are pretty darn important, but we charge our users a bill, you know, the $123 or whatever it is we charge for water sewer every month. Like, we raise that, we pay for those things. So like, ooh, that's a bonus, like other thing we could get done even when we don't bond for it. So the fact that those ended up no's, I'm kind of happy, even though they're essential. My other thought is, I don't think I fully internalized all the tricky calculations Will did with these 3 gray rectangles that I'm looking at. But for example, the top of the most aggressive rectangle at like $2 and looks like about 80 cents, I think is an unreasonable number for people, because that's like the total city levy rate now. I think that would be very difficult.
Anybody else?
And Yeah, a few things. I agree with Counselor Mitchell, or on the roundabout. And agree on his reasoning on the order of things. We have affordable housing as a yes, but we don't get to effectuate affordable housing on the west side without the roundabout being built.
Yeah.
So if we're going to bond for affordable housing on the west side, that still does not get built without a roundabout getting built first. So that's why I placed mine on a roundabout as opposed to affordable housing. About affordable housing in general, we are currently in construction of Mariposa Village. We have not seen the results of Mariposa Village yet. I would like to see the results as well. Yay. Regarding a couple of things on the police and public works. I am supportive of doing things to both attract and retain talented staff. Both of those things fall into that nicely. The only concern that I had about public works is that it's in the pit yard. And if we were to bond and fix up that building in our materials, we have a 20-year horizon lifespan of that building. We would be in effect agreeing to lock up that use for 20 years as a strategic asset. Do we want to agree to take on debt to lock up that asset for a period of 20 years when there are other uses that we could potentially choose to use that strategic of an asset for? So that's why I didn't put my particular dot under that particular button. While I still do understand that working out of a container or a box is not exactly ideal. Hopefully we can at some point find a better option. The rest of them I put as more integrative. Save Us School, I believe we could potentially trim down the budget wise, because most of those projects are either integrated in other programs, West Side Heights, what have you. As Will mentioned, a lot of them are infrastructure, but much larger. So a lot of those projects could be slimmed down to the budget for that could be very small, and thus our debt load could be very small. Along with if we were to do some targeted sidewalk infill, same reasoning, we could merge those two together or have nice synergy there. Along with the housing, roundabout, transportation plans, etc. So that was my reasoning behind why I put dots where I put my dots. Councilor Mitchell has his hand up.
Counselor Stupina.
I'd rather give somebody online a chance first.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, the way I voted is the way that it came out. Police Department, City Hall renovation, Public Works building, Safe Routes to School, and affordable housing. Regarding the first two, yeah, I mean, the not great conditions. Don't want to discourage people working from the city. I applaud Adam and Neil and their staff for working under those conditions. I think it's something that is tangible, that is easily communicated. If people understand what the conditions of those facilities are, it's a pretty easy yes or no, relatively speaking, compared to the other possible bond measures that might be considered more complicated. So that went into my reasoning. Safe routes to school, I think, there's to Grant's point, there are achievable goals within there that we could identify. Not take on the whole thing, identify where it might be related more to urban renewal, etc. All right. So I think that's achievable. And I think that the community, at least the community that I speak to, parts of the community I speak to frequently, would be very, very interested in that. And I think there's a lot of strong advocates that would be able to support that initiative. And affordable housing, to the points that were made before. Yeah, it's a difficult question because the roundabout, for example, if affordable housing was to be on the west side, is a critical sort of element. However, there's other things within that I will pique my interest about. We could play around a little bit with what AMI looks like and so on and so forth. So I think there's some movability in that. similar to Safe Routes to School, where it could be a little bit more tailor-made.
Great. Thank you all. I'm gonna turn it to Will now to look at, is there more to look at with numbers or
No,
get a
just,
sense of here's where you land if all 4 of your projects were funded? And do you want to just talk a little bit of the 10-year, the 20-year and the 30-year?
yeah, I
It's
think I have
that
that.
box up.
That, but now that you've seen what the rates are, do we wanna go through and see if we wanna remove any? Or is everyone happy, with this list? These 4 of us continuing to move on and develop these 4.
Counselor Stefano?
Can we see them one by one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was gonna take them from lowest rank to highest rank, 3 are tied, so I'll just go for where they are on the screen. Do affordable housing first, and is there a plurality that wants to remove that?
I'm a little bit confused about what the
Removing
question
affordable
is.
housing to only look at Safe Routes, Public Works and the police department?
Yeah, now that you see that, you know, if we did a 10-year bond or a 20-year bond. In these 4 projects, we would be just in ourselves pushing the highest tax rate that people in the city have ever or have paid in the last 12 years. And that's not including then what else, so the school district and the parks district and the other folks are gonna go for as well. Now that we've had this sort of fiscal gut check. Wanted to loop back and say, do we wanna pare down at this point?
No, can I?
My question was more or less, what if you uncheck Public Works, Safe Routes to School, and affordable housing? What does that look like? And then, one by one.
Oh, and then add them back.
Yeah.
Start from the top rather than the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're gonna go for all 4 is what my point is,
Yeah.
so, you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
I want to note, it's interesting the 4 that you have chosen. This is good that we do this exercise because you don't know where it's gonna land. Police department is a kind of all or nothing. You can't buy half of that because that does not have other funds. The public works building does have some utility pieces, but there would have to be, the bond would need to pay the pieces that have been identified. And then safe routes to school and affordable housing are somewhat scalable, right? Do you want to make a big investment? Do you want to make a small investment in those? So that is clearly, if you want to look at those, we'll need to do more work and bring you different options at different levels, what you could buy for different amounts. But I do want to note, like the police one is 100% this, and then the others are a little bit more scalable. So starting with the police department, Will, can you walk us through what we're looking at?
Yeah, so if we did it, so the police department, 6.8 to 8.7 million dollars. If we were gonna bond that over 10 years, that would require a rate of 57 cents to 73 cents per thousand. Over a 20-year, be 34 to 43 cents. And then over a 30-year, be 26 or 30 to 33 cents per thousand of assessed. That corresponds with these boxes. And this is how it would compare to the median tax rate that folks have been paying over the last, I think, 12 years.
And when you say median, are you saying like median over like the extra things or like the city, has a tax rate? Is that even over the city's tax rate? Like,
Yeah.
over more? I thought that.
So this graph in the bond primer shows the tax rate associated with voter approved levies. So that's the county levy, the school district. And I think folks, dollar is a dollar if it's coming out of your pocket.
But it's just levies and bonds, it's not like just the flat rate that you pay for the city and the county and
Is that different
all,
changes?
right,
Right.
Mhm.
okay,
So
so this
the-
is just like on top of.
Yeah, so this is on top. So the red. It is equivalent to what folks were paying in 2011. Is the highest it's been. We are currently at the lowest it has been in the last since 2009. So the green is the median that cuts between all of those years.
Will, I'm still processing what you said earlier, right? That, for example, the school district usually goes for a 10-year bond. That way in 10 years, they can, look at other projects. does it make sense for us to even consider a 20 and 30-year bond, knowing that we would, lock in future
Mhm.
councils from doing anything?
Good question.
That's a strategy question. We're thinking, what the Calgary city wants to strategically use bonds in the
Yeah.
future. There's also, I'd say, another dimension of it is generational equity. So if we bond for, say the fire station, for instance, if you moved here today, you're getting a free fire
Right.
station. And we put all of the burden of that for people who lived here between 2008 and 2018. Was that fair? Yeah, that's what we did. So to some extent, there's also a fairness aspect of aligning the bond to the length of the asset. So that the people getting the benefit of that asset are the ones paying for it.
So I guess
Gladys,
let me keep processing. Sorry, go for it, Mayor.
I think that when I moved here in 2000, we passed a 15-year school bond. I think at that time they were doing like nesting 15-year bonds so that every 8 or 7 we would pass a bond and we could truthfully say, this will not increase your taxes because one of the 15s was expiring. So we had a 15 and a 15 and a 15, and it was like at some point they refinanced and did a 10. But I don't want to be like the historical like fact knower, but I'm just pondering like, has the psychology changed? Like, is the 15 a way to go? I just am pondering what I used to believe was the practice that was successful for school bonds versus what I believe is true is happening now, and like, why did they change, and can we ask somebody?
Yeah, we can certainly ask the school district, just what was their decision-making process in 2016 and kind of their history of bonds. I think tonight, as I say, like, if you decide to move for a bond, we're looking for direction, like, I guess I would just say, do you want us to look at a long bond or a short bond? Like, just a kind of your temperature right now, if you're gonna direct staff to do this kind of research, it's hard to look at the possibility of everything.
Right.
So do you have a temperature check on where you're feeling right now, knowing of course that we're at the very beginning of this?
Short to medium.
Short to medium.
I agree.
Others, I'm gonna say, okay, thumbs up for short to medium. And then I'm gonna ask for the longer. All right, so in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, looks like a majority. Any interest in looking for something longer? You wanna like pass this on to your great grandchildren?
I mean, I think when it comes to infrastructure, if we're talking about infrastructure, right, I would
They
like
are
to at
long.
least have that information
Mhm.
so that we can make a decision based off of all the options that we have.
I also think some of it is like, I don't know, as a voter, you'd say like, oh my God, this is gonna be on for 20 or 30
Yeah,
years
right.
like that. I think that factors in terms of like, 10 years doesn't sound as bad in terms of how long that's gonna be on the books. Like, yeah, it might end
Yeah.
up being a continuing thing, but I think 30 years
Right.
is,
And every 10 years, you're gonna check back in with me as a voter,
mm,
right? The city's not making a big commitment.
Well, it also depends on what it is we're voting.
Yes,
Like
exactly, yeah.
Bennett brought up of, if we're expanding the lifespan of a building for 20 years. And you're still paying it for 30 years, that doesn't make sense.
That
does not make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can legally do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't only not make sense, it's illegal.
Yeah, good.
We don't need to
Great,
do
that's
that.
helpful to get that direction of like, we're looking at shorter.
Counselor Safina?
I think it should be tied to the life of the asset.
Yeah. Great.
So if it's a 20-year building or something like that, it's 20 years, I think is the most, like generational equity, I think is important, especially in a growing community.
Agreed, yeah.
Tie it that
Yeah.
way. So it's hard for me to say like small, medium or whatever. It'd have to depend on what the lifespan was.
That's helpful. I really appreciate that.
Mayor?
I think that when we see that graph that shows, oh my lordy, we have so much headroom on our capacity to bond, we should start to eat into that headroom somewhat, but not rush to the cap of that headroom.
sorry.
Sorry, go for it. Yeah.
I would say one thing, I don't know about like the generational equity component is interesting, but I would push back on a little bit is that we all pay for things that we don't utilize. Like, I don't have kids. I've never voted against the school levy because I think it's important for the community, you know, so that I'm not so concerned about. My chief concern in terms of this is like, well, one, I'm following the law in terms of, you know, not bonding longer than an asset's worth, but what are voters gonna, and what, you know, what can we, how much can we bond for,
okay.
you know?
Here's my concern about stretching out the term. We've run against an actuarial table problem in that we load up our interest rates. So we basically start just paying interest and not so much principal on debt. So just basically get on a treadmill, run for a long, long time. Regarding the generational problem or problem question, I'm not as concerned with that one because I'm sure that future generations will find other problems that they can bond for and pay for without too much concern. There will always be things, I'm sure, to pay for. So I'm not as concerned with future generations having to pay for stuff to live.
I mean, I guess I agree with the shorter term. I think it's more likable by people, less scary. And if, yeah, you're getting less in the end, you're paying more than.
Yeah, and one thing to add to the generational concern, if we commit to a long-term term, we take away the generational opportunity of people in the future to bond for things they may need, which we're not even considering today.
Right.
By committing to a long-term bond, long-term financial commitment, long-term interest payments, et cetera.
Yeah. Super. Thank you. This is kind of clarity they're looking for, so I appreciate that direction. Now, if I take that to, you know, if we're looking at a 10-year, 15-year, like that being, you know, 20-year being the max that we would really be looking at. And then looking at what the rate would be, you can see 57 cents, 34 cents, and that's just for the police station. Do you have any sense today, knowing you had not had a lot of time to think about this, about kind of where your comfort level is at a levy rate, knowing that there will probably be other requests from other agencies, knowing, you know, we don't know what's happening with the economy. Do you want your staff to research something kind of aggressive with a higher rate so you can do more projects, or do you want us to really be selective and go for a lower rate, knowing that you won't be able to do as much?
I'd rather not cut much over $1.60.
Yeah, I think Paul mentioned that earlier. It's like, how do we stay in between? So for me, it would, if we're talking about a levy rate, what's a sweet spot between 34 cents and 43 cents?
What is that sweet spot? And knowing right now, you're only looking at what it would take to pay for a police department, not all the other options. Sorry.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much a dollar amount, it's what we're doing with that dollar. Because it is taking on debt load, how much we're actually being able to leverage it, use it, utilize it for the public good. So if we're talking about in between those two lines, great, but it's more, to me, it's more what we're actually getting done with that dollar. Using that as messaging, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, this really is very chicken and egg, isn't it? About like, do you start with the projects, do you start with the need, or do you start with the dollars? And we're trying to do both of those today.
I'm not as concerned with comms. There are a number of ways to comms things.
What do you mean by comms?
Messaging.
Oh, thank you.
Whole field of studies.
Right.
To do this. I've done plenty of it. If we want to talk about a max cap, we can do that, but my personal opinion is we should be talking about what we are really getting for our debt dollar.
Right.
Mayor?
Respectfully, I'm going to disagree. I think if we come out at $1.90, appreciable number of people are going to just say hell no.
Sure.
Throw a monkey wrench into things here. I know we started off by saying like, well, like I want to know the dollar amounts on things before I put my stickers on stuff. Would it be helpful to go through the no's on here to see everything in terms of what things cost, if that forms a decision? I know that then undermines well, if it doesn't get 4 dots, that's the end, we're not gonna talk about it anymore. But,
That is a monkey wrench.
yeah, I mean, people can say no, but
It's like Will can line that up for you pretty quickly.
It's gonna cost us to get in everything.
All of it.
Right.
You want it all.
Way out of.
Oh, this is a
Um,
fancy spreadsheet, Will. Well done. I didn't
Wow.
understand that. Now I do.
There you go. To finance everything, all of the things listed here, the city needs $68 million.
I was suggesting each one knows.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Or this can be, you can send this to us on an email later or something
Okay.
like that. I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
I'm
well,
just-
check in, does everybody else?
If there
want
was
to spend time
consternation
talking
about like, well, I wanna know what this costs, cause maybe that changes my decision.
Yeah, I,
Like, that's what I'm saying. That gives people the opportunity to look at what it is and
Mhm.
it'll change them
Yeah.
into something. If we get that opportunity, I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like you're talking specifically about like the roundabout, right? Like, or. I don't know.
Right.
I'm going out on a limb. here.
No, but I'm actually, I mean. Might as well, that's what this meeting is for.
Yep.
Sure, I mean, I guess I would be interested in talking about seeing the numbers for that stuff, with, it can be a later time, but, also I'm kind of curious about. The people, like. Whether or not, I don't know, it has to be specific people talking about the top 4 affordable housing, well, if we can't really do affordable housing without the roundabout, would people be agreeable to taking that one off and putting the roundabout on? Or like, shifting our dots, is there a opportunity to revote after we have conversations, or like
yeah,
different prioritize, cause I feel like. With the 4 dots, okay, now we're locked into these 4, even though we're saying not, but how are we going to consider other ones that are no's if we are only focusing on the 4 that are yeses?
yeah.
I don't know.
Counselor Spina.
I don't think that we have to tie affordable housing to a roundabout. I'm just gonna say that. I mean, would it help develop the west side? Yes. Would that be beneficial for affordable housing? Yes, but I don't think they're absolutely related, right? Do people disagree with me on that? Can we not build affordable housing without a roundabout?
I would say that it would severely limit the ability to do that because of what buildable land. There is left in the city, and I would also say. That goes beyond just affordable housing in terms of having that roundabout, in terms of. Building stuff there, like, yes, for our purposes, that's a part of it, but it goes beyond that.
So I feel like in the conversations that we've had about affordable housing, and if I'm mistaken, please let me know, but a lot of affordable housing, and I've said this before, is tied to inventory. Inventory, I know that the idea is we're trying to increase the inventory so that, and maybe provide for more housing that can be afforded by people with different levels of incomes. And so that's the primary goal. But I think that the roundabout is interesting, because if you do unlock that development it is tied, like, in answer to your question, Doug, is it tied to affordable housing? I see what Ben's point is, that yes, it is, because it unlocks the opportunity for development of inventory, to increase that inventory. So I see the value in that. I also see it as a little bit, like, I appreciated what you said earlier, not everybody utilizes that intersection, not everybody gets frustrated that they can't make that left turn right there, but it's kind of a gateway to our community. Like, if you hop off 84 and you come through town, the first impression of our town is not dazzling, like that. So, I mean, it is an opportunity to make a statement about how we feel about our community. So I kind of agree too, of like, it's nice to have this conversation and hear everybody's thoughts about these things, because it might make me want to change my dots a little bit. The primary reason I didn't vote for a Mount Adams roundabout is I heard Will say that will get taken care of eventually with another fund. Like, well, then, why do we bond for it? And I appreciate that it, like Amanda pointed out, it increases we get it faster, and that could be a good thing, and it could accelerate the opportunity for additional development in our community. But you know, basically my decision was based on, I'm just going with my instinct and it's gonna get done eventually, so why would we ask people to pay more for it now? But yeah, I think that it is tied to that affordable housing piece.
Well, how much longer is it gonna take, right? If we don't bond for it, how much longer would it take to then truly unlock housing down the road? And there's a lot that's being brought up in these discussion that is going to be great for us to have as talking points when we do connect with individuals about any of these projects. This gets us this unlocks, whatever it may be.
To your point, according to our primer here, it says it will be several years before the district has the bonding capacity to fully support the project. We know how everything goes. Everywhere, things always taking longer.
Where it's also several years until we would see the money from the bond as well, so.
We're also in a position too, where there's gonna be less restrictions or less federal dollars that are gonna pass through. What sort of bills recently or previous bills have been created that could offset some of these expenses that we would have? It's hard to know, what those amounts are looking like, for the elevated sidewalks, for example. Do we have any, I don't know, any ODOT money or any state dollars that are going towards that project at all? Sorry, Counselor Sipina.
Still stuck on affordable housing. I think we're talking about two different types of affordable housing. I'm talking about capital A affordable housing, Mariposa Village 2.0. When it comes to the roundabout, unlocking development, could that lead to development, which could include lowercase a affordable housing? Sure. And we have incentive programs to do that, like missing middle and whatever. But what I'm talking about is specifically capital A affordable housing, i.e. us buying property or repurposing property to build housing like Mariposa Village 2.0 or something within the constraints of capital A affordable housing. I don't think that's contingent upon a roundabout. Development is contingent upon a roundabout, which may include lowercase or maybe even uppercase, but it's not contingent upon it.
And contains the whole alphabet.
Mayor?
I voted for the roundabout specifically for the unlocking idea.
Yeah.
I voted for the police department, affordable housing, and
So I think I appreciate this conversation. Thank you for this. And as I'm trying to pull out what's the direction for staff, I think that Will and I can go back and look more at roundaboutness and see. I mean, it definitely didn't get a majority of votes, but it definitely is dominating this conversation. So
By one.
By one.
By one.
yeah, as same with elevated sewer also was a 3. So we can certainly put this into, today is what do we want to research? We can research that and maybe clarify for you all just what the connection is to development and pieces, but.
Well, I also want to respect counsel here. I mean, as you phrase this isn't voting
That's right.
necessarily. It was temperature,
Yeah.
but I also don't want to feel like just because I'm picking up the mantle pretty hard on this one thing to bully council into doing this, and we want to respect, no, seriously, to respect that process. I really think it's important, but if we want to go with, no, we're going to treat this like a vote, then I will,
Well, it's just how should staff spend our time and energy.
I want to respect that, so.
If there's an interest in, spending more time and energy to refine that and bringing that back for more conversation, that's totally fair.
Can I say one thing? If staff came back and said it'd be really hard to do affordable housing without a roundabout, I would want to look at the roundabout, for example. You know what I mean? So I don't think to Ben's point, it has to be a change or whatever. I think these are all slightly related, and I think staff should take that under consideration. If it's something is on this list that's holding up one of these other goals that we're interested in exploring, one of these other projects, then let us know that.
Yeah, I can say right now, I can think of 3 or 4 investments that would in affordable housing that wouldn't be hung out by the roundabout.
That would or wouldn't?
Would not.
Would not.
But
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly, you go.
I appreciate the conversation. It's really nice to just be able to have a conversation with you guys about this stuff. But I'm also curious, back to my Groner comments earlier. Does anybody like in council, would you be interested in asking staff to set up? I mean, I don't know if there can be some kind of a joint conversation. I remember orchestrating this when we tried to do the master plan for the parks and getting everybody together. You know, I joked about it being the meeting of the 5 families, like getting everybody in the same room is really, really challenging with scheduling and everything. But to actually have, you know, the county, the city, the port, the parks and the school district together in a room to say, hey, let's talk about bonding and what you guys are gonna do. And is there an opportunity to collaborate here? Because we wanna move forward, but we wanna work together. Does anybody have any interest in doing that? Or is that like the worst idea ever?
No, I mean, I expressed interest in it, and that's where I had mentioned, like, what is the timeline? We absolutely have to decide on X amount, X projects by the same time in order to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I think it makes sense to have that conversation, especially more, maybe with certain places more like the county, like, is it worth revisiting, collaborating on a building on some sort of level? Are they, you know, open to that at all? If, and like, and I don't know if that, it didn't move forward before, but like, has anything changed where it might? Knowing that before might be good. I mean, I think it's good just to know what people are kind of working towards, but if there's room for collaboration, we might be able to gauge that without like an actual meeting. I don't know.
Yeah.
My understanding too of the last time that we had that discussion with, you know, a facility, at that time, the courthouse was not deemed like the worst courthouse in the state, which I believe now it has, so someone fact check me on that. So I'm assuming, not having had conversations with folks, does that open them up to other sort of state funding or, you know, that could help move that project forward? And if not, then we know a bond is the best way moving forward in order to get a police department renovation.
Well, I would want to hold up this process inevitably. I think we have to have a deadline of like, hey, we're moving forward. We would love to talk with you guys and see if there's opportunity to overlap in some things, but if it's gonna take us 2 years to even have a conversation, then no thanks.
Yeah, no. No, I think that you were very clear. Can we talk in the next month?
Yes.
Can we talk in the next month?
Right.
Councilor Sophia.
I think Abigail's been doing a really good job at kind of going out there and ensuring that she has a full picture of what all the other, you know, taxing districts are looking at doing. I'm not sure if they're doing the same. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but it sounds like Park District is going to go, and if they fail, they're going to go again, and they're not really asking us, like, you know, well, will that get in your way? If we were to do that, you know, to speak to other, you know, entities, then I would hope it would be something like we just talked about with like the police department and revisiting with the county quickly and not over a long period of time. Is there an opportunity to reopen that conversation? I know Abigail's been tracking that though. You know what I mean? Like she's always tracking and talking to the county, like what's the appetite there and that kind of stuff. I'm fine with, you know, sort of revisiting that, but it would have to be in, you know, is safe routes to school, affordable, whatever the dots are, you know, and with that lens versus like, can we find commonality between all of us? I think it should stick with our priorities because they're sticking to theirs. And I think it's not a bad thing. It's just that we all have different priorities. And the only time they're competing is when we're going out for these, you know, asking people for money. They're in competition, but more or less like we have to take care of city priorities, and they have to take care of parks priorities or county priorities first. And that's what we're representing the city. And the constituents of the city is what I mean.
And Anna, thanks for bringing it up. It's not the worst idea ever, but I'm definitely medium volume groaning. Like, oh God, that's like, there's only so much like orchestrating we can do is my feeling about that.
Fair.
With that being said, what has been the most like recent of what our peers are doing? Are they open to collaboration? How long until it's a legitimate space needs facility conversation so that we can give you better direction?
Thank you. And I put that as an action item to go back to the county, but I will say what has evolved over the project for the county was they started with a very narrow, you know, courthouse, probation, parole, sheriff, you know, maybe a few other functions. And we would say we would represent like 25% of that building or 30% of that kind of building. They have now expanded the scope of their project to the point where it would be administration, public health, and all of their courthouse functions, possibly other pieces, to where we might be 7% of such a building, or, you know, 10% of such a building, where I don't know that we would have a lot of voice in the direction of, you know, a facility. And I don't know how much they want to spend time with us. So we would be really more of a tenant rather than a partner in that.
Yeah.
And that at that time, that is when I said, you know, I think the city needs to step back from this. And they were also not sure if they were moving forward, how to move forward. They now have more momentum since then. So I don't know if it's worth going back to them, but we'll say we will be a very minor piece of a really gigantic project.
So I just wanna, like, we will all be paying for that if it
Yeah,
passes
exactly.
anyway, because we are in the
Mhm.
county, we are the county.
Yeah.
So we're also in the county, so whether we as the city and people in the city are paying for our own new police station and a new county
Mhm.
building. Like, I think that that's the point that we need to make, it's like, hey, we all wanna build a building, does it make sense to make it big enough to, you know,
Yeah.
have this grand vision of a civic center, like, you know,
Yeah.
it would just be wonderful, but like, if, like, what are we? Yeah, the nickel and dime thing of like, what are we doing
Yeah.
here? And, you know, in all fairness, like, I understand, and I do appreciate that you are in great communication with all of our other entities and partners in this community. But like, we don't know what we're doing, so it's not fair to necessarily say,
Mhm.
well, what is the county doing
Yeah.
for sure? Like, we aren't sure what we're doing. We're talking about ideas right now. And so that might be another thing that has been a roadblock to us collaborating in the past as well. We think we're doing this, but we
Yeah.
don't really know, and maybe we're holding them up. Who
Yeah.
knows?
We're not holding them up.
Yeah.
Not this time. Maybe we have in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think we'll always see that in there is constant turnover in both in staffing, but also in electeds, right?
Right.
So the council that sat here in 2018 and had the study, I don't know, was the mayor on? Like, no, I don't know that anyone at the table was here. It just came in 2019 as things were moving along. And so there will be that like there will never be the right time when everybody at the table is really ready to talk. There will always be that turnover.
I mean, that presentation was given to us towards the end, like right at the beginning of me starting. So I don't know if folks would have that packet or would find that information
Yeah.
useful to have, or.
There's pieces of it that we can certainly share
Yeah.
again. I think and Will actually was here as finance
Yeah.
director at the time, finance director, assistant city manager, when that fizzled out. I think that the county and the city, there just was a real, I want to say lack of enthusiasm or lack of direction for a joint facility at that time in like early 2022, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea of the joint city county facility has been tantalizing and has kept us from anyone taking any action for
Right.
at least 5 years. I think it might have been I don't know, is the chief here?
Yep.
Is that so we've looked, I think the various efforts were police station on Morrison Park, police station at State Street lot, police station, the 2018. Were the other ones also sort of like, well, maybe we should co-locate with the county?
It's always been brought up.
Come to the microphone.
It's always been brought up because as far as a cost saving or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
But
all the way.
it hasn't,
I think there was a 2012 consolidation study.
yeah.
So
So we did a 2012 consolidation study, the council went to the county and said, hey, can we consolidate both departments?
Mhm.
They did a full-blown study on that,
Oh,
it wasn't
that's
feasible.
Consolidation is different than like
Facility.
Yeah.
co-locating.
Yeah, and you know, in the early, probably the late 70s, early 80s, you know, we were in the courthouse. But that was, the city police was, I wasn't around during that time, but they were cohabitating in the same building, and then as the county grew, we got kind of pushed out. And they went to other places, so other locations, so. I personally, I'm gonna say my opinion, cause I really don't like the idea of, think of family, think of life, think of a team. You're going into an organization where I think Abigail put that lightly. when she said this building is gonna be a county, it's going to have every county facility they can put in. They're gonna have health department. They're looking at the full gamut of everything the county has. And they're throwing it in,
Except
their
public
goal is to put that into one building with with the circuit court system. That's probably 911 district as far as our 917 and everything like that. So we really are a very small piece of an organization that's not city. I personally, sometimes I don't know if that feels good for my staff, because really I think Grant said it best, or maybe Doug did, was, you know, it makes people proud to work in an organization that is their organization. You know, even like polishing the police department, you get good staff, you get retention, and we have people. I even had people leave there like, you know, you say you're gonna do this, but you haven't done that. Nothing I can do about it, nothing they can do about it. But it's said, like Grant said, you really retain well. And it scares me to think of something that could be potentially, when it was a joint facility with city, county, law enforcement and courts, we were looking, I think, at about 70,000 square feet, 65 to 70. They're looking to put almost every agency possible outside public works, you know, or, you know, the county road department there, and planning, building and everything like that. So I personally believe that, you know, 100,000 square feet probably, if you're looking to put everybody in there, if not bigger.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna speak freely as a taxpayer, it's gonna be a heavy lift
Yeah.
financially, to make that happen. I think Will would probably say that, you know, 5 years it has kind of pushed us back because it's that joint collective collaboration. But we're gonna try to sell, like Mayor Paul stated, was, you know, it's a huge lift as far as the bonding major when you're looking at 100,000+ square foot building, so.
This is a silly idea, and Adam and Neil are gonna be mad at me for even bringing it up, but what about a new building that's public works and police in the maintenance yard, like, Adam's not even looking at me.
We have talked about that. No, I mean, we have talked about that in the past. That's come up several times, and that is not saying that we should go down that direction, but that is an option.
Yes.
Neil, correct me on some of this is wrong, but we did a location ranking in the 2018 ranking.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that ranks low, and or about mid-range. And one of the reasons is that the gate is locked at night, and it needs to be locked, and there's you don't want a lot of people going in and out of there in the middle of the night, especially we've got the very back corner. So there's a lot of heavy machinery, there's a lot of things to get into, hurt yourself, steal. And it's a 24-hour facility, polices, and there's people going in and out. There's people following, maybe a domestic partner was arrested and getting taken in, and they get followed by someone. It's a lot of activity that is associated with the police department that we don't want pulled in at 2 a.m. into the back of the public works yard.
And there's twofold. One was the egress. They were looking at the study as far as how to get in and out, actually make that viable to into a public street once you do a full development. And the other part someone had mentioned too is viable property. I mean, everybody leaned when we did the study and the kind of like the dot idea, what's best, what fits us. It was really like they really wanted to look at potential. If we were going to do anything with that property, could we look at a land banking to build affordable housing on it? That was the biggest push for that piece of property. I think someone said earlier, you know, redoing something and then we're really, I think it was you said, and then we want to go down the road to maybe do affordable housing or change that if the county chooses to go outside somewhere else for their public works buildings.
Yeah.
I love the idea. It'll be on the record.
And I'm not against the idea of collaborating together, but where's a location that we could do it where, you know, we know it's gonna be there to stand and stay, and it's not gonna be a hindrance, because I think voting on that, I think it's gonna be a no pass, because people look at that as a viable source, because we as the city have echoed and the county has echoed, this is a great location for affordable housing. So I think your contention both ways when you want something, that's my opinion. So.
We also mentioned like all of city staff in that lot as well,
No.
in the past, city staff, public works and police.
One more thing quickly on this topic. Consolidation sounds like a great topic for a city council meeting that we can talk about. And writing bonding specifically, we talk perhaps there about collaborative bonding with our partners. I don't know if right now we need to spend more time doing it. It might make sense to explore more at city council meeting. None of these projects that we're talking about necessarily overlap a ton with our partners explicitly.
Yeah.
So I'm more comfortable moving forward on our own with these projects that we defined tonight. without necessarily consulting our peer agencies on this list that we developed. If there are more things that we can collaborate in the future about, I am more than welcome
Yeah.
to not live in a silo and collaborate with our peers, because I do not view governance as a combative competition amongst each other and ourselves.
If I can try to summarize where I think we are and maybe get us to, I'm gonna come back to you, so you know, what were my two things, right? Do you want to direct staff to do research and move toward a bond in 2026? So think about that. And then if so, what are the projects? So we've done a little bit of work that. So we went over here for microphone. What were some of your thoughts and some of the kind of chicken and egg, you know, it's difficult to fund projects in Oregon due to tax law limits. This is kind of this structure we've got. It's the best we have to work within that. Questions about what are the impact on taxpayers and having multiple bonds and not knowing what the economy might look like by 2026 and the next 10 years of that. What might a jurisdictional transfer have? What are the risks if these projects are not funded? So we went through some of that. Then we got to identify some areas. We got kind of 4 top pieces, although we also had a long conversation about roundabout. And then the action items that I've been kind of identifying here were so looking for kind of, I'm gonna be looking for direction on these after we have that conversation. Roundabout, maybe some more information about how that impacts affordable housing. I think Will just said right now that it does, like, there are other options for land banking that are outside of that, but we can get you more information. I think I got some clear direction on if we're moving forward, we look at a shorter time period for a bond. We're not looking at going for 30 or 100 or 50 years. We didn't talk about rate, but that's okay. And then a request that we give you numbers for all of the projects, just a little bit of what Will's worksheet kind of through each one, and we can probably send that as a summary email. Then kind of a request that we talk to the county again, at least to get a sense of where they are. I can certainly bring that back to you. And then I don't know if you want to have a long, and then I guess I can talk to the mayor or kind of at maybe one of your council calls, we can do a like, okay, this is the information I got. Do you want to have more conversations with the county, or is that a thank you and that's kind of done? But I definitely feel like I've heard a request for more update on where the county is on their projects and if the city could fit into that. Is that a good?
Yes,
And I'm gonna keep going, but
Oh, yeah.
just to check in there, like, I should go have coffee with Allison, right? Okay.
I'd like
Good,
to
so
make-
coffee scheduled for next week.
I'd like
And
to
then-
make one clarifying point about, I know people are sick of me talking about this.
No.
I wanna make one clarifying point about the roundabout thing
Mhm.
regarding affordable housing. My point about that was not just about affordable housing, being
Right.
like, we don't have that, we don't get any affordable housing. It was not just about that. It's about affordable housing, capital A, affordable housing, small a, housing,
Yeah.
whole alphabet, other stuff there, not, it's not just tied to that.
And I think when Will mentioned, you know, the state law allows for bonding for up to 120% AMI, so that. Anything.
Anything, yeah, we said. that,
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then finally, I heard interest in a joint public works PD facility. Is that something, I mean, because those two ranked high, we can pull up a little bit of information on that and then come back to you and say, do you want us to research this? You know, like knowing the time is a little bit tight.
I want to say that we've already done some research around Public Works, Police Department and city staff at the Public Works
Okay.
Yard. I believe you were here then, so I know that there's been some, and there was even conversation of, you know, the county would have to relocate somewhere else. I don't remember all the specifics, but I know that there is some work done around that already. The other piece that I think I heard during the conversation of rate setting is, you know, we were looking in between the two lines, the green line and the red line, and that it was, you know, under $2. If we had looked at a levy that we had said somewhere in between 34 cents and 40 some cents to be in the middle, and then that can help us understand the total amount of dollars and understanding the graph that showed us, that Will showed us one by one, being able, how much would it cost for this? How much would it cost for that to help us get to that number and which projects
Great.
those would be.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. And then, the last piece there was, a discussion around consolidation. I heard like that maybe doesn't fit into this at this moment, but a desire and
Yeah.
interest in. Having some, maybe a special work session or try to do some pre-work. Internally as a city to talk about consolidation kind of things. Before we would go out and talk to our partners about potential consolidation. So this could be parks, this could be, is this back to the county?
I'm
Mhm.
confused about that, yeah, was that, what was the consolidation piece? Was
You
it just
mentioned
about
the parks,
stuff, or-
yeah, the
okay,
parks
not-
piece.
Not police office, like. that,
Yeah,
just-
no,
just
no,
parks.
no, just the
Okay.
parks piece.
Park.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, okay, and the other little clarifying thing is, the idea of collaborating with our partners was limited to just the county. I was thinking of, like, I mean, that was one example, but I just didn't know if that, because you said
Yeah.
your action item was to go back and talk to the county, which I know you already talked to them, but it was more about like also talking to the parks and saying, well, we know you're going out for bonds. Is there something that we can collaborate on? That
Yeah.
was the idea, but I'm not saying you have to do that. I
Yeah.
just was asking if everybody else thought that was important or not.
I think that's a great one to have for even future conversations. If we start it now, what's the plan moving forward?
Yeah.
And everyone's on board so that, again, we're not in this position where, you know, I know we all have different priorities, but at the end of the day, it's constituents that have to agree to pay to these increases.
I am going to note that. Parks here got 0 votes, and maybe that's because it's, you know, you'd rather have that as part of a consolidation conversation. I'd also say that is not part of your work plan for. Years 25 and 26. I
Mhm.
mean, if you want to add to the work plan, then I'd come back to you and say, what do you want to drop? But but certainly I have once a month lunch with Kevin Greenwood, I have once a month coffee with Mark Hickok, I can certainly ask them. Their feelings, I see Bill Newton frequently, and just get a sense of what is the appetite, you know, and also, is it appropriate for the city to lead those conversations, or are we asking to be invited to the table? So I think there's a lot of different pieces that we could work through, but I'm definitely hearing an interest in like at least exploring this. So these are kind of, I think the green circles here are my follow-up pieces where I think I've heard a majority of you ask for a little bit more research or more information, and we can work through those as we find time.
Yeah.
I don't know, this may help me, I don't know if this is possible or whatever, but, so we saw like all 4 yeses. Assuming we're not doing all 4 projects, but maybe we will do 1 or 2 or, you know, a couple of them. I guess for me, I'm trying to think like how they would fit together in an ask, like if we chose 2 different ones, are they related enough to like cover one topic kind of?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you might be able to like say like, oh, I can see how putting these together, we could go
Yeah,
for,
we can work on that.
this is the messaging because they're related this way. That'd be helpful for me.
Yeah,
I appreciate that, especially if it was like, hey, this is the infrastructure package, here's what this would do.
Yeah.
Here's what this would fund, we, you know, we need this, we need this, I think that's a great talking points for us to have.
yeah.
And maybe like police, safe routes to school, like, are those relatable?
Yeah.
Or-
Right, yeah, this is great, because really today's goal was, you know, if you wanted to move forward, then what projects are we looking at, and what projects have we eliminated from the conversation? So having
Yeah.
removed, you know, almost all of, you know, I don't know, well, more than half of the projects is super helpful. So now we can look at the 4
Yeah.
that were identified, a little bit more information about roundabout. And then bring this back to you in a couple different ways. And then the next step, of course, would be, once we've honed in on some of those details, then we wanna hire a polling company, right? How does this look if a, you know, we got a statistically valid survey, if voters come back and say they love or they hate or they support, but not at this level, then we will need to refine those requests. So it's a really iterative process. Like today's the roughest cut. And then the next cut will be a little less rough, cut after that will be a little less, but we will, you know, we gotta polish this over the next 6 to 8 months.
To that point, you asked a question earlier in terms of, I think, when was the kind of when we were to say, all right, this is what we're gonna bring to voters, like I know
Yeah.
there's obviously a deadline for
Yeah.
submitting something to the ballot, but in terms of our own internal deadline, like we're done, talking about this, like this is what we're gonna put forth.
We can't add any projects to the bonds. Is that what I heard?
Right, at some point you have to
Yeah.
stop tinkering.
Yeah.
So, I think what I had given to you a couple, back in August as a rough timeline was, in October, we would refine the list that you've given us, and the budget. And then we would come back to you and say, here's what we think consultants might, I say, this is the budget for the bond process
Mhm.
itself, right? This is what we think it'll cost for polling.
Right.
Consultants, one question I don't think we're gonna get to tonight, but we have for you is what kind of public engagement, do you wanna do a lot? Do you wanna do a little? Which is that's a really big deal, because that'll also push your timeline. And then in November, have a presentation by a financial advisor on the preliminary sizing. If these are your projects, this is what it might look like, and here's how that might work. And then starting our polling process of saying, okay, with these projects at this dollar, voters, would you support that? Are you
Mhm,
interested in
mhm.
that? And then bringing that back to you and then making refinements as we go.
I think the outreach piece is like this information, all of the money piece is really important, but the outreach is the one that I've been thinking a lot about, right? How do we ensure that whatever it is that we decide to bond on, if we, decide to continue
Yeah.
moving forward, that there are several points where folks have all the information that they need. I find that during voting time, folks are calling me and sometimes they're asking me about things for the county, for example, but folks don't always have all the information that they need, and some of the verbiage that's included when it's time to vote, it's really confusing. So what are those plain language elevator speeches that
sure.
we're giving about here's what all this is gonna do and what it's gonna fund, and here's how it's gonna look like in the future, and why this is a good return on
And
investment.
my recommendation would be to you that we hire a company that
Yes.
does this. Because
Yes,
this is such special and important communication that's different than our day-to-day communication.
agreed.
But we will bring that information
Yeah.
to you in October. So like kind of the drop dead, like when do you have to decide, are you moving forward and what those projects might be? I'd say really we need to know that kind of by the end of the year, because
Yeah.
that's when we're bringing,
For sure.
the polling, hopefully we'll bring polling company on earlier, but communications, bond strategy pieces of it. Really have to need to know what we're talking about so that,
Yeah,
you don't put it on the ballot till the summer, but we really need to have a good sense of what are we talking about.
agreed.
So with all of that, I come back to my two questions that I started with. And it is okay to say, gosh, this was a useful 3 hours and I want to walk away and not touch this again.
Mhm.
So my first question is, would you like staff to do more work on a potential bond for November of 2026? You got a thumbs up over here?
I have a yes and a question.
Yep.
Yes.
This is on our work plan, right?
Yep.
So let's say moving forward, yes, go work on a bond. Are there any other project between now and the summer that get put on hold because staff is dedicating a lot of resources towards this? Does any project come off the list or lower down in priority to focus on this?
Well, I think we're always balancing, but I think my Swiss Army knife here is Mr. Norris.
Yeah.
Who I think, agreed to lead this process. So I don't know what you think for your workload.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's impossible to say.
Yeah.
But no, I think when we put together the council work plan, right?
Yeah.
We expected to do that was a reasonable amount to get done.
Mhm.
And so we've been expecting to dedicate time and
Okay.
effort to this ever since it was added to the work plan.
I'd also note that a lot of items on the work plan are things that would be affected by this, right? You just chose housing.
Yeah.
The police station is
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that, so those things are interconnected.
Mhm. Agreed.
Great.
Okay.
This met my needs in my need for clear direction, with lots of caveats to that. I guess I would just say, first of all, thank you. And then can we just do a quick check-in of like, how does this work? Any like major outstanding questions or reservations? Or did you get all of your questions answered and you're ready to vote tomorrow?
Yeah.
Like, where are we?
Yeah. Mayor, do you want to start us off? Did you get all your questions answered?
I'm so much closer. Like I said at the beginning, I really wasn't sure how much and for what. I think I'm pretty close to thinking like, wow, okay, we've come to some agreement about which projects are and aren't. And I think the hiring the professionals will help us on the my bold assumption that $1.90 is going to be too much. Like we can get those answers from from professionals. So I think we're on a great path.
Counselor Stupino?
I agree with everything that the mayor just said. I'm glad we're focused on facilities for our employees, for the police department, for the public works. I'm glad we're focused on affordable housing. Glad we're focused on safe routes to schools. I think these are all in lockstep with a lot of our priorities. And thanks for the spirited discussion, everybody. Sorry to join you from a few thousand miles away.
Bring us pizza.
I already ate the pizza, so
The tavern style.
it was tavern style too.
There you go.
Bring him tavern, you can bring everyone else deep dish.
Late night for both
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah,
Bring it on.
right.
Yeah, I thought that was very like enlightening tonight, and I'm glad to know kind of where everybody's at and where we're all at as a group and as the process, so I feel complete and ready to move on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm certainly uncertain.
Yeah.
Fair. Thanks for this conversation. It's been great.
Yeah, Sharon Circle.
You knew I would make you do this.
Trust falls are next. Got it. I'm gonna pass on that one. I had still a few concerns. I know we did dots, yay. The strategic ramifications of some of these things that we highlighted, for example, that I highlighted earlier. Deciding to bond for public works would commit that land to that use for that period of time.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that strategically, if we're going to do that or not. So that's a strategic decision that we may want to consider if we're going to strategically commit to that use.
Yeah.
So, I didn't hear any discussion about that. We want to talk about that? Yes, no. It's fine if we don't. That's just me. Yeah, and then just incorporating this, I understand our objectives with effectuating affordable, big A, small A housing in general, all of that. Taking a more strategic approach on order of things, roundabout versus land banking versus whatnot. I personally would appreciate a more strategic approach to that. In terms of how we're prioritizing things and talking about the strategy behind it, instead of just saying this versus that, and then to me leaving it at that. But that's only my impression.
Can you help me understand that one a little bit more?
What do you mean? The actual
Strategy about land banking and like how many units we can produce of X housing, or like,
There are strategic implications as to whether we allocate resources into affordable housing, land banking, or if we allocate resources into building a roundabout and attracting resources either through interjurisdictional transfer with ODOT, whatever that is. It may, and I'm just talking.
Yeah.
It may be more effectual to build a roundabout and effectuate, may be able to get more net housing built.
Yeah.
And more of that may be affordable than allocating those funds into a plot of land for affordable housing. That's the strategic decisions that I'm referring to that I don't think we discuss enough when we're talking about bonding or choosing to debt load and talking about the strategy of that implication.
Got it.
So.
I think I heard that earlier of a roundabout is critical to housing statute, some research report back on how the roundabout moves the needle.
Yeah, and that's
Or
not,
doesn't move the needle.
that's not,
But that's specific to the roundabout, though. You're asking about housing in general.
yeah, but that's a strategic choice
Right.
on how we allocate resources and which things we allocate resources to.
Mhm.
And the outcomes of those strategic choices.
Right,
Just like choosing to allocate them to sidewalks or any other mode of transportation.
yeah.
Effectuates more housing. So I understand we address our priorities, we want housing to be built, but I would appreciate more of the strategic approach to that sort of discussion. That I know that's super high level.
Yeah, no, but I think, I mean, I think I hear what you're saying, right? Let's say we go for an affordable housing bond. Like, what does that get us? What types of housing? How are we prioritizing X amount of dollars is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
Is that something that we discuss coming up, or do we discuss that now?
I've added to the list of like, because I want to bring that back later.
Yeah.
And say, is this something you all
Yeah.
want us to
Yeah.
spend time? I mean,
Yeah,
I think for me, right now, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a consultant specialist who can extrapolate housing number,
Understood.
you know,
Okay.
like, we don't have any data to.
yeah, yeah,
You know, at this point, it's all feelings.
yeah.
And I think Counselor Polson is looking for hard numbers that would be like, option A gets you this, option
Mhm.
B gets you that. I don't know if that can be done, but let's have that conversation at a council meeting where you can tell me if you want to spend time on that or not.
Okay.
That's one of my impressions.
Yeah. Thank you, Counselor.
Right, what Grant said.
2 votes for that.
No, but I am, you know, yeah, this is helpful, like meeting beforehand is helpful. This is really important stuff. We, asking, a decent ask for voters here, and these are some big projects, in line with that strategy. I am thinking about, what would voters potentially support? And I have a couple, like things that I'm a little bit concerned about in terms of stuff that we know like is important, and that like anybody takes a tour of the police, like that's the police station, like if you can even call it a station, it's rooms at their end. Taking that as taking that tour as a city councilor, I was really taken aback by like how inadequate those facilities are. But are voters going to care about that?
Mhm.
Is that something that
Really
they're going to
risky.
support, as opposed to some of these other things that they will, and same thing with like public works building, it's like, well, I don't use that, like what am I gonna get out of that, as opposed to like safe routes, or sidewalk info, or like understanding like a sewer line or
Mhm.
pipe, like that is one of the things in terms of what Graham was talking about regarding strategy. Like we all put our dots on the police station, but don't know if the community will. So that's kind of some of my backgrounds and communication stuff. Like I'm kind of thinking about what voters will support, regardless of what we know is the need and what we know is important, because I might not feel the same way.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
I appreciate those points, and I think that goes into like this communications package. How do we show you a 10-second video, right? Like, here is where folks are getting interviewed. Here is where our public works, right? Like, it's 100 degrees in here, and this is the conditions that folks are having to work with.
Mhm.
So I think we can absolutely explore
Yeah.
what are the different formats that we can outreach individuals, and people learn in different way, they absorb information in different ways. So there's, what is the text, what are the videos, what are the other formats that we're doing? And sounds like you want to be a social media influencer then.
Oh, do not use the word.
Great.
Yeah, I appreciate all the conversation. Would love to explore a little bit more of Counselor Polson's comments that he mentioned, and it sounds like we'll do that at a future meeting. I don't have anything else to add.
Great. Then I think if we're finished with this topic, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we need to hold an executive session. So Council President, you have a script to read, and then you will work to close everything as you speak that.
Yes, the city council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room and we will end the public broadcast. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decisions may be made nor final action taken in executive session. The executive session is anticipated to last. Abigail, how long do we think? it is?
I need 30 minutes.
30 minutes. At the end of the executive session, the city council meeting will be adjourned and no action will be taken. We will now